Hello, welcome to What a Scream, the horror movie podcast. I am your host, Ygraine, and every week I discuss horror films with a special guest. And in particular, we discuss two films that kind of have to do with a certain subgenre, topic, or theme that I have previously chosen. So this week, my guest is a reoccurring guest, a friend of the podcast, Elaine Pascale. She is a writer, author, really into horror. And we have kind of begun to do this series pretty much every month, where we're kind of doing literature-themed horror films. So previously we did Dracula, we've done Frankenstein, and this time we decided to do, now it was a very easy subject because there's only two films to do with this theme, so it was pretty easy. We are doing Anne Rice, the author. She is infamous for her kind of vampire chronicles. She's also done a lot of erotic and Christian literature as well. I was a massive fan of her as a teenager growing up because I was heavily into vampires, as I think most teenagers are. They go through their whole goth phase and, you know, it's all Anne Rice and feckin' Nine Inch Nails. So yeah, I read all of her vampire chronicle books as well as like her witches' tales and all of this. So we decided to do Anne Rice for our theme this week. As I said, it's a really easy theme to do. There's two movies. There's Interview with a Vampire, obviously starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. And then there is Queen of the Damned, which follows on the Lestat story, starring the late Aaliyah and Stuart Townsend. So yeah, it wasn't very hard to watch. Well, it was kind of hard to watch because in my head, I was like, oh, I love these films. You know, they were like great. And I was really into vampires and they're so sexy and suave and blah, blah, blah. And then I went back and watched them. And I was like, ooh, okay. So yeah, Anne Rice, just a little bit of info on her before we get into the main body of the episode. So Anne Rice, she was born in 1941 and she is an American author, as I said, of the Vampire Chronicles, a lot of gothic fiction, a lot of erotic literature. She was born in New Orleans. She centers a lot of her books in New Orleans, and she kind of began her writing career with the publication of Interview with a Vampire in 1976. And then she began writing more sequels to the novel in the 1980s. She went through a bit of a Catholic phase in the mid-2000s, and she published Christ the Lord Out of Egypt and Christ the Lord The Road to Cana, which are like fictionalized accounts of the life of Jesus. So she has sold over 150 million copies of her books. She's one of the best-selling authors of all time. There isn't a lot of, like, you think there would be more movie adaptations of her books because they're just like this sprawling universe. And that is something that me and Elaine will be getting into and kind of trying to figure out why. But yes, so enough of my rambling. Here is my interview with Elaine about two Anne Rice films, Interview with the Vampire and Queen of the Damned. I would like to welcome back to the podcast, reoccurring guest, our literary genius. They know all about the literature. It is Elaine Pascale. How are you doing, Elaine?
I am doing well, and I know I told you on social media, but I wanted to say in person, however in person this is. You are the most glamorous bride I've ever seen.
Oh,
I was so jealous of everything. Hair, makeup, outfit, flawless.
Yeah, it was so weird because I was like, we were only allowed 6 people.
Yes.
In the venue. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get all like madly bridal. So I think I'll just, you know, I've always wanted to wear leopard print as a bride. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to wear leopard print. And then we went for a nice picnic on the beach. So,
oh, beautiful.
So laid back. We're going to have a big party in October, hopefully, where I will do the whole bridal thing. But yeah, it was nice to just do a little bit of rock and roll for the official bit. So what have you been reading recently? Anything good?
I just read an anthology called Unburied. It's an anthology of queer horror literature, and it was really, really good. I'm going to be posting a review of that soon.
Okay.
Really, I wish I got so busy that it kind of got bumped to the end of my queue, and now I'm regretting it because Pride Month would have been a really nice time to advertise that one. So I just finished that. I've been reading some of my friend Lee Andrew Foreman's stuff, going back and rereading his, and just other things that people ask me to take a peek at. There's always a list of things to read, but I don't regret that because I always have that anxiety about what if I have nothing to read.
I have the biggest stack of to be reads like ever, and I keep starting a couple of pages and then putting it down and then forgetting to go back to it, or things have just gotten so busy that I can't. So I just have this stack of books that I have to read. One of them is Feminist Sluts and Witches. Have you read that?
Okay. I've not. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was recommended. It's quite a short book, so I could start it and get it finished in like a day or two. But yeah, it was recommended to me, so I really need to start and finish that book.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and have you seen anything of interest recently?
I'm liking The Fear Street.
Okay.
I liked the second one better than the first one.
Same.
I'm nervous about the third because I always have, it's just a pet peeve of mine. And I know it's the hill I'm dying on and I don't know why, but witch stories always make me very, very nervous. I hate that anti-pagan stuff and like witches don't believe in the devil, so stop calling these Satanist witches. It irritates me, and it looks like from the previews it's a case of mistaken identity, that she's not really a witch. Can we just have a Satanist come out and just slaughter everybody and just call it a day, But the second one I was really happy because in the beginning I thought we were getting that late 1970s, early 1980s final girl. Oh, I don't drink, I don't do sex, I don't do drugs. And it twisted, and I was like, that's good. That's good. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the first one. I just thought it was a bit, obviously it was setting up the background and the story and everything, but I just thought it was a bit meh. But the second one I actually quite enjoyed because I wouldn't be the biggest fan of like summer camp slashers. But
I love summer camp slashers.
Oh, really? See, I want to be a big fan. But I think that's because they're all the same. Whereas this one, I really liked the character of Ziggy and, the relationship she had with her sister. And it was just a nice setup for it, I thought. But yeah,
fingers crossed the third one's good.
Yeah, like yourself, I just don't want it to be all pro-Christian and I'm kind of, that's like, I saw the most recent Conjuring film and it's very pro-Christian and I'm like,
oh, is it? I haven't seen that one yet. I've seen all the other ones.
Yeah, and it seems to be like something that's echoed amongst a lot of horror fans where they're calling something satanic, but it's not, and you're just kind of like, that's not Satanism and that's not like, But anyway, so keeping in tradition of our episodes, we are doing another literature-based episode.
Well, we'll use the term literature loosely, and apologies to Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley for going right in this direction after we finish with them. It's a little weird.
Yeah, we thought we'd break with our usual pattern of doing Gothic literature, classical Gothic literature, and we decided to do Anne Rice. A bit of an easy one because there's only 2 movies, not much to choose from. Are you a fan of Anne Rice?
Not particularly. I don't find her to be a good writer. I find her very difficult to follow, and I kind of sort of know her son a little bit, so I'm trying to be very careful about how I speak. And he's a wonderful writer, by the way.
Yeah.
I will give her, I like what she did for the vampire stories. I like that she reminded everybody that New Orleans is a vampire capital, New Orleans and Alaska are where all the vampires live. So let's embrace that. And so I love that she did that. And I love that she, in her stories, both romanticized the vampire and de-romanticized the vampire at the same time. She's the one who really, really dug into that loneliness and regret, and that we're going to talk about in both these films. And I honor her and appreciate her for doing that.
Yeah. I would have read all of Anne Rice when I was about 16, 17. Obviously going through my goth phase. When you're a little baby goth, you do latch on to Anne Rice, I think. And I was obsessed because they were quite erotic books, and it was kind of like I'd sit in the corner of the living room reading these books and trying to hide my blushing cheeks from my parents,
and very openly, in terms of eroticism, very openly homoerotic, very which I also appreciated as well. This idea that we're not gonna. It doesn't have to be a heterosexual thing going on here, and that's
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was just obsessed with vampires. As we've talked before about Dracula, I was obsessed with vampires. And I think this was around the time that Twilight came out that I started getting into Anne Rice. So it was kind of like my pushback on Twilight, because I was one of those people that were like, I hate Twilight, blah, 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 blah. So that was kind of my pushback. So that's why I got so heavily into Anne Rice. I love the universe she created. We've got the vampires, the Mayfair witches, and then the giant half-breed hybrid creatures. And I really appreciated that. So yeah, as I said before, there's only 2 movies. Why do you think Anne Rice has had such a hard time getting her stories from book to film?
That is a good question, because Interview the Vampire was being batted around as a film for about 10, maybe nearly 20 years before. It came out in 76 and the film came out in 94. And I believe when the book came out, they were already talking about a film, and there was just so many issues with who was going to get behind it and who was going to, and she was really working on scripts. And interestingly, she did write a script where the Lewis character was female, because she was afraid of how's Hollywood going to embrace this very homoerotic story. I think Cher was lined up. Cher's Queen of the Damned. You don't make her Lewis. Come on. Cher. But yeah, it took it, and I'm wondering if, you and I have talked about the Gary Oldman Dracula, which is about the same time. I'm wondering if it was just the fact that there was a lot of interest for this type of a film at that time that finally it got the push forward.
Yeah. I think it's so weird how, because her books are so cinematic, they're just, even when you're reading them, you can imagine the film, or, you can imagine certain people playing those characters. So it's really strange how, hardly any of them have become movies, or even, I know there's talk now of TV shows, but I just feel like that's just going to be put on the back burner as well. And it's maybe people did think it was too, at the time, they did think it was too, homoerotic, or, it was still a bit could we introduce this to Hollywood? Now I definitely think so. Absolutely. I want all the gay vampires. But yeah, it's something that's always puzzled me. And whether it's because she's very protective of her rights, I know she wasn't happy with the casting of Interview with the Vampire. So I'm wondering if that has something to do with it as well.
I also think maybe her books are a little too epic. When I think of vampire films, they're a little more indie, a little more intimate. And the ones I enjoy are more intimate, like Transfiguration, Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. They're just, and when they made Interview, Neil Jordan, who finally, was the director, said he wanted it to be epic on League of Gone with the Wind, which I'm still trying to marry those 2 films in my head. But you don't think of vampire films in that epic way, or I don't think of vampire films in that way. And maybe that might be why it's not meshing so much, because there's so much that goes on in the stories too, that they end up always cutting them. And you're right, Queen of the Damned isn't like the novel at all. So it's, maybe she was very protective of it and didn't want these things to happen.
Maybe. So shall we start with Interview with the Vampire then? Do you want to give us a short-ish synopsis, as much as you can, for this movie?
Yes, ma'am. So, as I said, directed by Neil Jordan in 1994, starring Brad Pitt as the main character of Lewis. He does not have fond memories of this film. he didn't receive the script until about 2 weeks before filming and realized his character does nothing except for look pretty. So you get that, but he kind of sleepwalks his whole way through the film. He's a petulant brat the whole way through it. And they filmed at night because the vampires, it was cold and it was depressing. This wasn't his biggest moment. And as you said, Tom Cruise was cast as Lestat, which is the main, he's the vampire. He's the alpha vampire. And Tom Cruise, whatever. Anne Rice was really, there are no words. And Anne Rice was very, very disappointed. She had wanted Julian Sands, who they said was not a big enough name. He hadn't really done much. Have you ever seen Gothic with Julian Sands, where it's
No, I actually haven't.
My God, it's about the night when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein.
Okay.
And Julian Sands is Percy Shelley, and I think Gabriel Burns is Lord Byron. Okay, write it down because you must.
Okay.
You must see this. So she wanted other people basically, and was unhappy about Tom Cruise because when you read the book, he's the last person you're picturing. It's not even it's not even in your head. But later on, apparently, she had a change of heart. I don't know whether it was just because the film was a commercial success and so she was jumping. I don't know, but she did end up liking it again. Kirsten Dunst plays the young Claudia character, who is based on Anne Rice had a daughter who died, I think, age 4 or 5 of leukemia. And again, this was, I give Anne Rice credit for that, for bringing in that character in the book. It really was, that's such an interesting, there was so much you could do with that. And Kirsten Dunst got a Golden Globe nod for that role as Best Supporting Actress. Antonio Banderas was in it. And River Phoenix was supposed to be the reporter, but he passed away about a month before filming. So they put Christian Slater in, and I don't mean to leg hump because I don't even know Christian Slater, but he did the role and he gave his salary to a charity in River Phoenix's name, which I thought was very lovely. That was a very nice thing. So it was a commercial success. They got Oscar nominations for Best Art Direction, Best Original Score. The makeup on the vampires, I do want to mention, was really interesting. The vampires are very human looking in this film. They do not look like animals or monsters. They do look human. But the makeup artist had the actors hang upside down for half an hour so they could trace the veins. Wow. So the vampires, even though they're human, they're not quite. There's something a little off that if you ran into them on the street, you'd be like, they're beautiful, but something's not right with them. But it was successful. It was a successful film.
Yeah. So what is your personal opinion on this film? Do you like it? Do you hate it?
To me, it's not a vampire film. Again, it's very epic. It's a beautiful film. The costumes, gorgeous. Brad Pitt's very, very pretty. What's his face? Antonio Banderas, very, very pretty. It's just, to me, it's not a vampire film. It's very romantic, the flowy shirts, and the epic sprawl of it. But I do like it. And as I said, I really love the Claudia character, and that Lestat, I mean, it's you can't even say, oh, maybe you're just reading a queer reading into this. It's not hidden at all that Lestat's in love with Louis. They're a couple, and Claudia's their Band-Aid baby.
Yeah.
But then as she matures and develops sexual feelings and womanly feelings, but her body's still a child, it's heartbreaking. It's also so weird because she's like into Louis and he's kind of into her. Like it's her dad. It's just there's so much going on that you can almost just have a film just on that, on that piece of it, and it would be very, very interesting. I'm not a Tom Cruise fan at all. When Top Gun first came out, which is even more homoerotic than Interview with a Vampire, in my opinion. The most homoerotic film ever made in the history of film. When that first came out and everyone loved Cruise, I was like, he's weird. There's something wrong with him. I just got this vibe.
Yeah.
And now we know he's super weird. There is something really wrong with him.
Yeah.
So I could never, and he always, to me, he always looks like he's acting. It doesn't come natural to him. It's always, he's trying so hard. It just, I don't know. What is your
so I have a soft spot for Interview with a Vampire because at my very first sleepover when I was a kid, this was the film we watched.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so there were a few scenes that were quite scary to me, like where Claudia hides the corpse amongst her dolls, and that quite disturbed me a lot. And I'm sure we'll touch on that again when we talk about Claudia as a character, but Again, it was very erotic. It is a very erotic film. You know, they didn't shy away from the homoeroticism and also this violent eroticism, such as what happens within the theatre. There's vampires.
That's the creepy. Oh, that's so creepy.
Yes. So I do have a real soft spot for it. But I think, apart from Claudia, I think all of the casting is completely off. Like you said, I think Brad Pitt is a bit too much like, what am I doing here? You know, what is this? And you can kind of tell that he's just kind of half-assing it. I mean, I know Louis isn't a massively complicated character, but he's still quite like he is quite mopey as a character, and we just needed a bit more mopeying for him. Lestat, for anyone that hasn't read Anne Rice, he is, well, they call him like the brat prince or something like that. You know, he's bratty. He thinks he's an alpha vampire. He, you know, his ego is massive. And I just don't think Tom Cruise quite got that. And he was just being Tom Cruise. And I hate Tom Cruise. Like you, I've always hated Tom Cruise. Always. And I know this is really bad because I know books from film, they're completely different. They're another artist's like interpretation of the text. But the way that the vampires looked was so integral on like their origin story or where they come from. And, you know, Lestat was quite angelic looking and quite... That was part of his charm, that he was so angelic looking, but he was quite dark at the same time. And then they've got this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, gnarly-looking Tom Cruise. And it's just like, that's not Lestat. And then even with Armand, played by Antonio Banderas, who is brilliant. I quite like him.
Yes.
But it's not Armand. Armand is from, you know, Scandinavia. He's from real European, like upper European. So he's very blonde. He's got ice cold skin. And that was his whole character arc. And then they've made him into like a Mediterranean man. And you're just like, that's not Armand.
Yeah.
So that was my problem with the characters. What do you think of like that particular aspect of the casting? Do you really care about what a character looks like when it comes to the books, or...
No, of course I do. I mean, Tom Cruise, you know, when I heard about it, I was immediately like, that again, not in a million years would I have put Tom Cruise in that role. But they tend to do that with Tom Cruise. They put him in all these movies that are based on books. You think that he's just so inappropriate. Yeah, I agree. I think the casting was not good. If we knew Brad Pitt was going to be so miserable, he should have been axed out and put somebody in who could have a little more fun with it. You know, he kind of brought it down. If you're telling somebody your life story, you would have some inflection, you'd have some passion. He's completely monotone the entire way through the film. The voiceovers are just dreadful.
Oh god, yeah.
Then we went to Paris. We saw no one like us. Okay. Do you have a feeling about that in any way? No. Really? Yeah, it was. I mean, I feel for Anne Rice. I really do. I feel for Anne Rice with that, because I can imagine you create these characters, and she obviously really loved these characters. She really, really is invested in these characters. She still writes about them and talks about them and incorporates them. So I can imagine how disappointing that would be, to have your vision just be so ignored and different from what the actual product was.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of the queer coding of the film. Obviously, we touched on it, but even my partner was watching Interview with the Vampire last night, and he was like, "Oh my God, it's so queer for like a, like a 90s film. You think they'd try and be a bit, obviously back in those days, it wasn't as accepted, unfortunately, as it is now." But he was like, "Oh my God, it's so, like," he was like, "Why would Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, like, I wouldn't have thought they would have done, because they're such like macho heartthrobs." But I don't think you could have, if you'd taken all like the homoeroticism out of it, it would have been awful. Like the whole story, yeah.
People watched it that way though. In '94, I think people were more like, because there was not an actual sex scene.
Yeah.
People sort of blew it off a little bit as like a bromance, I think.
Yeah.
It's just the same way like you had that uncle who never married and you're like, well, he's a lifelong bachelor. He's a skirt chaser, and you're like, no, he's gay. He's just, like, it was sort of that same kind of, we're gonna pretend we're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Especially Tom Cruise, who sues magazines for accusing him of being gay.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm remembering it not being quite so picked up on.
Okay, maybe it's just from like our modern eyes, and obviously, myself as a queer woman, I'm like, that's gay. Like I can see it from a mile away. That's true. Yeah,
doesn't dance around it.
Yeah,
the book's really obvious.
Yes,
they love each other. It's not.
Yeah.
Or there's an attraction. I don't know if you want to call it not loving anybody, but you know what I mean. There's a chemistry attraction between them.
I mean, it's kind of like a toxic relationship, isn't it? It's quite codependent. And, Louis, I'm trying to, like, who's more codependent, Louis or Lestat? And it almost, even though Lestat puts on this bravado of being like this amazing alpha vampire, it's almost like he's more desperate for companionship than Louis is.
True, because Louis left him. And Lestat doesn't leave Louis ever.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and then, as you said, they have a Band-Aid baby to try and fix their relationship in the form of Claudia. Which is
awesome. That's so awesome.
I just love it. I was like, how can people not get this? And poor Claudia, your heart just breaks for her because, like you said before, she is a grown woman in a young child's
How
body.
torturous is that? And this time when I saw it, I even thought about like sort of a transgender reading of that, of like who people see me to be is not who I know I am inside. But absolutely. They're not going to recognize or acknowledge. No one's acknowledging she's an adult. And Lestat he's so patronizing, bringing her dolls and things. And she's like, are you kidding me? I don't.
Yes. And the scene where she kills that woman and then she hides her body within her dolls. And it's such this pivotal scene for, she's not who she is inside that body. Like you said, she is another person. And in this respect, she is, it's symbolism of like a monstrous thing hiding within an innocent thing. So we've got the corpse amongst the dolls. And it was just such a strong metaphor for who Claudia was.
Yeah.
And that scene scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
It's heartbreaking now when you see it as an adult and you realize what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you feel? Obviously, there isn't much horror in this, but it is a horror because it's based on vampires. What can you even comment on any horror aspect in this film?
Well, I mean, certainly there's horrific scenes, and when Claudia, we do spoilers here, right? When Claudia kills Lestat and has him drink the poisonous blood, and then they get rid of his body. When they lock Louis in the coffin, and Claudia and the woman that she has turned into her mother, caretaker, or whatever, and they're in the sun, that's horrifying. Louis is like a pyromaniac. He's running around burning down plantations and buildings and theaters, and which is a little weird. Like, I wish there was more. I kind of want to get more of that. Like, what's going on with Louis in the fire? He's really into this. He's into burning, like he scorched earth behind him. He's like
he just wants to see the world burn. Like
yeah, that's kind of cool. Like Brad Pitt, get into that. Come on.
Yeah, there was like little moments of Brad Pitt's performances, like when he burns down the theater with all the vampires, and I'm like, yeah, come on, like
we want them. Let's go.
We want to see that tortured soul that Louis is, not just this like mopey little monotoned gobshite like he's being. Like when he's like really upset about Claudia, and you're like, yes, get it. And then when he's having that bit of a moment with Armand in the art gallery, and it's like, yes, this is, I wish they just pulled out a bit more from him. Like, just come on, pull it out a bit more.
And the horror, like I said, the horror of being a vampire who has to live in the dark, who can't really be intimate with anybody or close to anybody. And that's, Anne Rice really latches onto that in her novel. That's a key point for all of her novels, that the vampire is the monster, but he's also to be pitied because his existence is just horrible. I mean, Louis doesn't want to kill people. He's eating rats and whatever and chickens and things, just trying to avoid who he really, I mean, it is such a queer lens. Trying to like fake it and be, like everybody else, sit at a dinner table when he's not eating, that sort of a thing. It's really, that's horror. That's hard to me.
Yeah, it's such a traditional trope within classic horror is a loneliness of the monster. We saw it in like Frankenstein. And it's possibly like the main theme within this movie. I think it's so hard to pick a theme in this movie because I think it's trying to be deep sometimes, but it's not that deep. But I wish they'd concentrated more on this loneliness. I think because we've read the books and because we've read a lot of Anne Rice books, we can say, oh yeah, well, that's about loneliness. But someone who's like just watching the film would just be like, I guess. I just wish they'd perhaps concentrated on the actual loneliness. Another horrific scene that we kind of touched on was the scene in the theater where there is a coven of vampires and they put on nightly theater shows, and most of the audience think these shows are fake and they're actors when they actually sacrifice a woman on stage. And
that's cool. It's a cool part of it.
That's probably the coolest part of this film. It's good. Yeah, because it's just so quiet, and you can always like feel the audience holding their breath, like, what is going on? Is this real? Or how did you feel when you first saw that scene?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. Like, is somebody going to realize this is real? Are they going to, boy, these people are really good actors. It's, it's so, how do they think this is being done with like fake blood and what? It's a real tense. It's very, very tense. And even prior to that scene when, is it Stephen Ray? Was that his name?
Yes.
And he is mirroring Brad Pitt. Like he drops down in front of him and is doing everything that Brad Pitt's doing. Like that's creepy too. Like there's that whole Theatre de Vampire is it's very, very creepy and very tense and again, it's going against that, like, well, we can't be part of your world, so we'll just pretend. Yeah. We'll pretend in a way that you're not in on the joke. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's great.
Absolutely. So would you recommend Interview with the Vampire to horror fans?
To horror fans. Again, it's not a vampire film. Not as bad as Twilight. It's Twilight wins the award for the worst. It's one of those films that I can imagine like recommending to my friends who like romance and things, who are a little more into that kind of a scene than horror. This isn't really horror. Yeah. It's epic. It's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I guess, you watch it, but know that you're not getting into like a slasher film or something. And it's not even going to be like many of the vampire films you've watched.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about vampire films, 30 Days of Night or, you know, even Blade, you know, there's still that carnage and that a lot of bloodlust and a lot of gore. Whereas, like you said, Interview with a Vampire is like romance with like the tiniest bit of blood.
Although Oprah was so against it because of the violence, she walked out after 10 minutes and was going to cancel her interview with Tom Cruise because she felt like this is the dark side, it's evil, or, you know, I'm like, wow, Oprah, you're very smart. Yeah.
For anyone that can't see me right now, my mouth is like wide open. Are you for real? I take it she's never read the book then.
Yeah. Or never seen a horror film in her life if she thinks this is the thing.
Bless her. So there has been rumors of an Interview with a Vampire remake / TV show. Do you think it will translate well to modern audiences?
I think it might. I think they'll at least, you know, I can't say because it's not here yet, so I can't say if it's going to be good or not. But I think it will at least have initial interest with people who missed the Vampire Diaries, you know, people who were into those types of things, and there's really nothing out there that's feeding that for them, that they'll latch on to this. And, you know, so I feel like they can have at least an initial audience, and if they do well, they can parlay it.
Yeah.
Supposedly Anne Rice is producing it, and Christopher Rice is producing it. They're behind it. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying that in a positive way or not. I really don't know. I'm just saying it.
I think if it's a TV show, which I think it is going to be, isn't it?
It's going to be a series, yeah.
Which means that they can go further into the world and it doesn't all have to be wrapped up in like hour and a half, 2 hours, which is kind of good. So they can make it quite epic. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I hope they don't kind of... Oh, I don't even know. I hope she just does right by herself, I think. You know, she stays true to what she thinks rather than like perhaps what a big TV studio executive might think. That would be great.
Well, she's producing it. She's funneling money into it. So that'll give her a say.
Yeah, hopefully. And if you was in charge of the casting, who would you be casting?
That's a good question because I'm trying to think of people like young enough. Because you don't want them to be... You start naming people and I'll see if anybody clicks into my head. Who are you thinking?
Possibly someone like, now this could be very controversial, but possibly someone like Tom Hiddleston or Benedict Cumberbatch as Lestat.
That's interesting. Huh.
Just because they've got that like arrogant air about them. That I think Lestat needs.
He needs a very big personality. In the books, he's sort of big physically too.
Yeah.
But he doesn't necessarily have to be physically imposing as long, like he doesn't have to be a Helmsworth or something, as long as he has a big enough personality.
Yeah.
To do it. I'm just trying to think like who's like sexy enough to do it. Everyone I'm thinking about is older. Is like too old.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah. Florian Rice. My God. Maybe they'll pull some unknown out of nowhere that's really gonna
yeah. I think that might be good. Just to kind of curb people's expectations. Yeah. I can't even think of a Louis, you know that? I can't even.
I know. I'm really stumped. I'm really stumped.
And like even trying to think, there are no actors' names in my head right now. Like there is nobody.
No.
It's definitely one to think on.
I agree with you. Lestat should be British though. Like a British actor. Definitely.
I think they're just good at the arrogance kind of.
They are. Yeah.
Yes. So let's move on to the second car crash. That is Queen of the Damned. So it is a 2002 horror film directed by Michael Rymer. And I love it how the Wikipedia says loosely based on the third novel of Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicle series, The Queen of the Damned. So it stars Aaliyah as Akasha, Stuart Townsend as Lestat, and yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Stuart Townsend's sexy. I'll give him that, except for when he's trying to sing and he's doing that weird Jim Morrison thing that just is, it was every time I was like, stop.
So there's a scene where, Lestat is awoken by the music of this heavy metal band, and because he's been in a long, deep slumber, and they're playing the song, and he just appears, draping himself on their amps, and he is singing along, and he's making this face, and I just burst. It's within the first 5 minutes of the film, and I burst out laughing. I was like, is that meant to be sexy? Because that's not sexy. And so Lestat becomes a rock star because he wants to bring vampires in the light. He wants to, be the biggest star on earth. And they gave him Jonathan Davis from Korn's voice. Lestat, who's meant to be gorgeous and angelic and dark and mysterious, is not going to have Jonathan Davis's voice.
Yeah, there was such an incongruence. Like I said, the minute he would start to sing, I would go, stop, cut. No, we're not doing it. Can we just skip over this? It's not. I'm completely out of it now. I've completely lost any interest.
Yeah. It definitely felt like they were kind of trying to get in that new metal crowd that was around at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So Lestat awakens. He becomes, somehow within the space of a month, he becomes the biggest rock star on earth. Bigger than Elvis. And it kind of awakens a lot of the old vampires. It attracts a lot of attention of lots of vampire covens who want to kill him. He also awakens Akasha, who is the mother of vampires. Yeah, and then we have a bit of a backstory of Lestat and his maker Marius, and then we are introduced to the Talamasca, who are an ancient order sent to study the vampires, and there is an apprentice there, Jessie, and she has a strange affiliation with Lestat, and she's a bit of a fangirl, and it's just a mess of a film, really.
It really is. It kind of, in the beginning, you're thinking this could be good. This is good. And then we get introduced to Jessie, and she's at the whatever it is, the Paranormal Society of London, which is the most lush, extravagant mansion I've ever seen. If you know anybody who's ever been involved in a paranormal society, they tend to work out of their car. Yeah. And the guy turns to Jessie and says, I don't want you to put yourself in danger anymore. But here is a diary of a vampire that's just going to make you so crazy you're not going to be able to help yourself, but go stalk him. And then I totally don't understand. She and Lestat were in a room together for 2 seconds, and they're the biggest love of the century.
Right.
How did that happen? I'm not a romance person. I'm not a love story person. I'm not at all. But at least give me a little, at least in the Gary Oldman Dracula, we're he and Elizabeth were married, so they did love each other. You can see how he loves Winona Ryder because he thinks it's her. You can at least kind of thread it together. This one, how do these two, why are they in love with each other? They've never even spoken to each other. It's bizarre. The whole thing.
I need some backstory. I need some, lay the foundations here. Mm-hmm. This kind of, I don't know. It just seemed like they were trying to do gothic love, and but you're just oh, that's just so stupid. There's a point where there's a really bad scene where she's like, oh, take me, and he's like, oh, this might hurt your poor human body, and then they fly over, I think it's Los Angeles
or something,
and it's so bad, and it's just and then they land on some random roof, and he's like, I don't know why I can't quit you. It's basically fucking Twilight, but years previous.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, and she's like, do I want to be a vampire? No, maybe I do want to be a vampire. And you're just like, oh, come on. Like,
I know, it's just and Queen of the Damned, it's been a long time since I've read it.
Same.
Was more feminist, more like, let's build this female vampire culture, a new Eden, where now woman, instead of woman being underman, woman's in charge. And that was completely left aside in this film. They were, you just have Aaliyah, she comes up, she does this weird like belly dance walk where she just like shifts her, and she's a beautiful, rest in peace, she's a beautiful, beautiful woman. And I don't mean to body shame, but she's the body of a boy, kind of like, like she's doing this like sexy stuff. She's got no breasts, no hips, no bum, because she's so thin.
Yeah.
And we're all supposed to be seduced by this, and it's not working for me as a viewer. I'm, I don't know.
It's a bit strange.
A little more voluptuous and sexy, and I wasn't getting that.
Yeah, I mean, she's meant to be the mother of all vampires, and I mean, whether it was because she died before even editing had finished, and it kind of felt like they cut a lot of it out and obviously didn't have the chance to refilm. But yeah, I didn't get that mother of vampires feel from her. Mm-hmm. It just felt like she was just an ancient vampire, meh. But I didn't feel power from her. Like, don't get me wrong, she's stunning in this performance. Like, she's gorgeous and she's beautiful and she makes a really good vampire, but I just didn't get mother of vampire vibes from her. Right. And then we've got this other maternal figure, which is Jesse's aunt, who is a vampire, but she bore a child before she became a vampire, and she's protected the bloodline, except everybody but Jesse has died. And it just felt like they really could have gone for the maternal, like you said, feminist vampire of, these two maternal vampires are what have protected the bloodline of both this one family and the vampires. And they just missed a trick with it. They just went for the, oh, look at Lestat in his sexy leather pants. Like, which
I was trying to, but that wasn't enough for me. I was like,
it's really not. You're like, stop. One thing I did appreciate was, so we've got this group of ancient ones, which are made up of Marius, Jesse's aunt, there's Pandora, although these characters aren't explicitly named in the film. For anyone that reads Anne Rice, you know who they are. So there's Pandora, and then there's Armand, and that looks like what Armand is described like in the book. So I was quite like, and Pandora is like an Indian woman, although they could have definitely used an actress that was probably actually Indian other than just dark hair. But yeah, how did you feel about the casting then?
So I felt, well, you're naming all these characters, and I felt like if you didn't read the book, you'd have no idea who these people are, what's going on. It's like, oh, okay, we're supposed to feel something as these people are dying and fighting and warring with each other, and you wouldn't have any idea who any of them are.
Yeah.
Again, I like Stuart Townsend as Lestat much better than Tom Cruise. Much better. He's got a little more of the feel for it. I like that when he's learning to become a vampire, his big hang up is like, oh, we can't be known. Like, nobody can know who we are, what we do. And it sort of tied in nicely with the interview with Vampire Loneliness, but then it explained why he wants to be this rock star. It really, that kind of actually then made that make sense. Like, why would this vampire wake up and want to be the lead singer of this band? But then it's like, oh, okay, because that's sort of his big thing, that he really wants attention. He wants a lot of attention, and he can't get it otherwise. So I like that. I thought that, the rest of the cast, it wasn't so much the casting that bothered me as the fact that it felt like they were trying to cram like 3 of her books into 1 hour. Yeah. And it was just very confusing. It's very confusing. Who are these people again? What's going on here? And then, like I said, let's try to shove a love story in here and have Jesse and Lestat be in love, but then also have Ashante kill her husband of 8 million years for Lestat. We don't know why. We have no idea. And now she wants Lestat. Nothing was explained. We're all just supposed to swallow it and go, okay, all right.
Yeah, it was just a bit unexplained. It was, it could have done with perhaps another half hour, maybe another 20 minutes of just, but again, maybe that was because of the death of Aaliyah, that it perhaps couldn't be explained. What did you think about the look of the vampires? Because they were quite different from how they were portrayed in Interview with the Vampire. As you said, in Interview with the Vampire, they were quite human, unless you looked very closely, and you saw the veins and their eyes popped a little bit more. Whereas here, they go full on vamp. Their eyes are either black or red. So what did you think of that?
I didn't mind that. I kind of liked the interview style a little bit better. I just found it a little more intriguing. Mm-hmm. But I didn't mind it. I liked the black, red eyes. Again, the costumes were very interesting. The costumes worked. Again, the Aaliyah. Again, it's just a disfortunate she died in the middle of everything, and they couldn't do more with that, because it almost felt like she was going to a costume party and she was like at the wrong party. Everybody else was dressed one way and she was dressed another. It was
it's kind of like, for me, Akasha's costumes, like, they were gorgeous and they fit her body perfectly, not very practical. And like a breastplate that doesn't have a back, it just kind of sticks to the boobs, and you're like, well, if she's going around murdering people, like, that's going to fall off. Like, that is going to fall off, especially, like, it's just going to go boop, and you're going to, just not practical. It kind of reminded me a lot of, like, video games, and you're like, you've got this, or like superhero comics where you've got these females that are meant to be really badass and they're like, they'd never wear that in a million years.
Exactly. You nailed it. Yeah.
And I just feel like they could have done the Mother of Vampires. They did her a bit of a kind of, disservice by just objecting her to this sexy body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So would you recommend Queen of the Damned?
It's a bit of a marathon to get through. It's difficult. But again, both films, and I get stuck in this time period thing. I think it's a really like late 90s, early 2000s film that, like, if you really want to get into that scene and see what that was like, this is a good film for it. The way people dress, the way the music they listen to, it captures LA at the time. So it's good for that. I'm not sure. I feel like they cast Aaliyah to get people to watch the movie. I think that's why she was put in it. So to get like this younger crowd to follow the film. So if you're going in expecting something from her, don't really, because she was barely in the film, and what she was in, she's not doing too much.
Yeah.
Out of the two, I think I would recommend Interview over Queen of the Damned. I think it's a little easier to follow.
Yeah. I think it's kind of funny because, like, Interview with a Vampire, I have a soft spot because of, like, I was a young child at a sleepover and I saw it first, so I have that memory. And then I have, even though objectively it's a terrible film, Queen of the Damned, I also have a soft spot because it came out around the same time as I got heavily into my goth kind of, and I was listening to Korn and I was listening to heavy metal, and even though I couldn't because I was like 13, 14 at the time, I wanted to wear all that PVC and leather, and I even though when I was little, because I was so obsessed with Dracula, if people asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, a vampire. When I was a teenager, it was like, I want to be that gothic vampire, and I want to be sexy, and, I want to be, I'm already a kind of like an outcast, so I might as well be like a sexy and mysterious outcast who can also rip out people's throats.
Look, you did become a sexy outcast who can rip out people's throats. Good for you.
Thanks. We're just a little bit less PVC. At least not in the past year and a half. So I do have a soft spot because it follows like how I've grown up, and I have a soft spot for Anne Rice because of the exact same reason.
Mhm.
But looking back at it now, I'm like, oh dear, why was like I had the soundtrack and everything, like I was obsessed. I did. I had the soundtrack for Queen of the Damned, and because I was that new metal, heavy metal kid,
Yeah.
and
It's so cute. I'm like secondhand embarrassment for you right now.
thanks. But looking back now, like I was like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed for past you. Like, oh, it's not good. It's not good. So yeah, like you said, if you're after a bit of nostalgia, then sure, check it out.
Yeah.
But don't go into it with a brain.
Or expecting to be scared or expecting, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I definitely, like you, would recommend Interview with a Vampire just because I think aesthetically as well it's a bit more pleasing. So like the sets, obviously it being set in like New Orleans, and then, the Baroque kind of fashion's gorgeous. Try not to take too much notice of Tom Cruise. But yeah, I think that would be my choice as well.
And see, there's a part of Interview that for me is a little like, imagine being Claudia and like they bring in dressmakers to make your dresses. The scenes where they're just doting on her.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Until she kills them all.
I was like that, yeah. And I would probably kill them too after a while, after I got the dresses I wanted.
So if you could choose any other Anne Rice book to be made into either cinematic or television series, which one would you choose?
I'm going to go a weird way. I'm interested in when she went deep into the Jesus stuff.
Oh, okay.
That could be kind of cool. Like, keep Mel Gibson out of it. Keep Mel Gibson away from my Jesus. But that might be kind of cool because she did a deep dive into that, and that might be interesting. Because everyone thinks Anne Rice vampire.
Yeah.
Right? She's sort of become queen of vampires.
Yeah.
Let's see her in a different light and different direction.
That would be interesting. There also was rumors of her Sleeping Beauty erotica being made into.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you there, but there was another book that I was obsessed with as a teenager, and I wouldn't mind it being turned into a film. I think it was called Black Farm. Let me find it. Oh god, she's got so many. So she had the Lives of the Mayfair Witches trilogy, which then kind of got meshed up with the Vampire Chronicles as well. And then we were introduced to the Tautos, which were like the giants. So I think it was called Black Farm or Blackwood Farm was where they meshed the witches and the witches together. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry.
That's okay.
Where is it? Unless I completely made this up. Yeah, Blackwood Farm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there was Blackwood Farm, and then I think Blood Canticle was the next one. Yeah. And that kind of joined the Mayfair Witches and the vampires together. So I wouldn't mind something like that.
That would be interesting. And maybe, you're right, maybe as a series it would be better because then you could really explore it in a deeper way. Her books they're lengthy.
Oh, gotcha.
A lot of things happen in them. So trying to squish everything, synthesize it all into a cohesive film is challenging. So, give it time to breathe a little bit and percolate and develop.
Absolutely,
might be nice.
Yeah. So as you know, usually I'd ask what your favorite horror film was, and I also asked you what your worst horror film was. So this time I'm going to ask you what your favorite vampire film is.
I usually say 30 Days of Night because I just love it so much. I love Transfiguration. Have you seen that one? It's about an inner city boy who believes he's a vampire. And it's the socio-cultural. It's really, really nice. I love Let the Right One In, both versions, the Swedish and the American. And Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome spaghetti Western vampire film. Like, it kicks ass. But probably, and I Lost Boys. I had the Lost Boys. This is where, this is where I was with embarrassing, teeny bopper tween years, where I had like my Lost Boys vampire poster and Kiefer Sutherland is a vampire. Like, I was into that. Kiefer Sutherland was damn sexy in that movie. He really was.
Although I always had a crush on Alex Winters.
So
he was my crush rather than the two main, Kiefer Sutherland or Jason Patrick. It was always Alex Winters for me.
But I think 30 Days of Night is just so. That's what vampires are. And Alaska, I mean, thank God somebody has like put a spotlight on Alaska. You can't throw a rock without hitting 10 vampires if you're in Alaska. They're all up there. Let's stop ignoring that.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
What's your favorite vampire film?
Probably, I don't know, because it's so hard, because there's so many different types of lore when it comes to vampires. And, we've got the classical, like if you were to ask me a classical vampire, it would be Bela Lugosi, Dracula. But if it was like more of a modern kind of telling of vampires, it would be The Lost Boys for me.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, it just that kind of, it turned it from being like the aristocratic weirdo European guy, from being like teenagers and your own kids and the MTV generation. And I just really like that as that. And I really love Vamp, just for Grace Jones.
Oh yeah. Oh, so now you mentioned that one, I'm thinking about like The Hunger. That was a good one too, with David Bowie and Susan Sarandon. I mean, there's a lot of good vampire movies. That's why I think, when you say, would you recommend Interview the Vampire? Like, if somebody said to me, what's a good vampire movie? No, I would not recommend Interview the Vampire as a good vampire movie, because there's just so many really good ones out there that really are just fantastic.
Yeah.
At doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you hope to see from vampire movies? Is there something you would like to see explored?
I guess it's kind of curious to me. I think we should explore, like you, I love the old European. I love the Bela Lugosi. I love that stuff. I love Dracula. I love Count Dracula. I love Bram Stoker. But it's kind of interesting, how is the world changing for vampires? Like, in the lore, they can't look in mirrors. They don't show up places. So can they Zoom? Can they Skype? Can they, what's life like for vampires in a pandemic? There's a lot of questions I have.
I like it. Absolutely. I'd be on board for that. I mean, I was going to say, obviously the vampire lore also was from, Asia and China and Japan. And I'd really like to see a lot more kind of, not just the typical American or Eastern European vampire lore, but vampire lore from other countries as well. Obviously, we had that film Thirst, that was Korean. But yeah, I'd like to see a bit more of that coming into like Western cinema as well, I think.
But no, I don't want that Western cinema. I want the Japanese and the Koreans to make those films, because they make the scariest horror films. They make the best, the scariest horror films around.
Yeah, that's what I meant for like.
Let them do it. Yeah.
For someone like Bong Joon-ho to do a vampire film.
Oh yeah. Oh, I would be so into that. I would watch the hell out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting about Anne Rice with me.
You.
And we will be continuing our literary series.
Yay.
Hopefully. That was my chat there with Elaine Pascale about two films, the only two films that are adapted from Anne Rice novels. So that is Interview with a Vampire, starring Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and Kirsten Dunst, directed by Neil Jordan in 1994, and Queen of the Damned, which was released in 2002, starring Stuart Townsend and Aaliyah. What do you think of the Anne Rice adaptations? Are you still hoping for a good Lestat adaptation, as we all are? yeah, let us know on our social media. So that is Facebook and Instagram at What a Scream Podcast. You can at me over on Twitter. Let me know what you think about Anne Rice and her films, or the films that were adapted from her books. That's at what_scream. And don't forget, we also have a Patreon where you can give us support in different tiers and budgets. You get nice little goodies, some extra episodes, etc., etc. As always, I hope you are doing good. I hope you're getting ready for new releases that are coming out soon. Yeah, fingers crossed they all come out. And yeah, stay horrific. Goodbye.